I think sometimes we're afraid to be honest with ourselves about where we really are. Mm-hmm. And then it's hard to translate that to other people. And we live in a society where you can present an image and not really be authentic to who you are. And I love that that's one of your main takeaways, is to encourage people in authenticity. June, it's amazing to be with you today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Moms Change the World. And I'm so excited to talk to you because you've been practicing so many of the relationships-based care for others for so long. And I think the audience is going to love hearing your story. But before we jump into that, the ministries that you've been a part of, I wanted to see if you could just give us some context, share a little bit about yourself.
I came to Dallas a long time ago to go to SMU. I had gone to I'm from Rhode Island and went to high school in north side of Chicago, and then came down to SMU and graduated back in the early 80s, actually 1980. So that's very early 80s. And I worked for the university for a year and then got in working for a promotional advertising company for around 20 years. And came down and became a Christian right after I graduated from SMU. And I've had 2 children, married, had 2 children. What else do you want to know?
And how did you find your faith? Why did that become important to you?
I was at SMU, and I remember that I had found a prayer list in my bedroom, in my college dorm room, and the sorority used to conduct a Bible study in my room. And after the Bible study one night, I found my name on a prayer list, and I thought, what is this? Why are people praying for me? And then a group of people came after me and talked to me. So that was the journey of what started for me to become a Christian, were my friends in the sorority at SMU.
To know that they were praying for you, and
yes,
that intrigued you.
And I kept thinking, and they explained the gospel to me, but I wasn't sure. I said, let me think about this. And so it was several months later that I finally had one of those aha moments. And
will you tell me about that? Do you remember?
Well, I remember I remember being a little kid, and I remember saying my prayers at night. Like, I remember saying the Lord's Prayer at night and then getting at the end and saying forever and ever, amen. And I remember thinking forever and ever. That used to kind of scare me. I couldn't understand that concept. So I was thinking about things, I think. I think I had a spiritual sensitivity growing up. I didn't attend church regularly, very sporadically. And but I think I remember I wanted to go to church, but my parents weren't into it, so we didn't go as a family when I was younger. But I think once I went to SMU, and I just met good people, good girls, and they came to me and talked to me and shared their faith. And I do remember kind of when it all came crystallized and started to make sense. And it was out of a sense of blessing, I think, for me. I was at a place where I thought, wow, I've been able to come down here, I had this education, and I've had great relationships. I felt it was an overwhelming sense of gratitude when I first became a Christian.
Wow.
So it's kind of it's opposite from a lot of my friends. A lot of my friends who became Christians were in a hard place. I became a Christian when I was in a very good place, and then God started to reveal to me things that I needed to peel back and take a look at and rebuild. So it's interesting.
That is so interesting. Yeah. It makes sense with who you are as a person. You look at things with such a positive outlook and a spirit of gratefulness and blessing. So I think it makes sense to me that would be impactful to you in your understanding of God.
I know it's kind of a different way to come around it, but I feel very grateful. I came here kind of on a whim. I was going to go to college either in Maine or in Indiana, and I changed with the last 30 days before school started. and ended up coming to SMU. It was just kind of on a whim. So, and then I've stayed here my whole life, basically. So.
And how old are your kids now? Where are they?
I have 2 kids. I had them in my 40s. I had my daughter at 40, and she is in Boston, and she is a criminal defense attorney who was a public defender. And then my son is in his 2nd year at SMU in law school.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Some attorneys for children.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, they are out there. You know, my daughter's well on her way, but you know, she did a stint in the defense clinic, and as a public defender in Alaska was her internship, and that's shaping her to work with underserved populations, and you know, she's a fighter.
Making a big difference.
I hope so.
Mm-hmm. And you know, June, what's struck me as we've gotten to know each other is just how naturally you have worked into your life caring for people who are vulnerable. And it's really been a part of the ethos of your life and the life of your family for decades now. Will you tell us a little bit about how you got into first Refugee and more lately Meals on Wheels?
When I was in high school, I just remember signing up with the Salvation Army and going and serving in downtown Chicago. So I kind of started at an early age, and then behind where we lived was a nursing home. And I just remember going over there sometimes and just meeting different people because it was right kind of in our backyard. And then coming to SMU when I graduated, I did a little volunteer work with the Salvation Army, and a friend of mine got me into Meals on Wheels maybe 15 years ago, and it's been a great portal to meet different kinds of people. I've loved it, and we also worked with a ministry through our church called Bridging the Gap, which when my kids were in high school, we volunteered by working with a family. Twice a month we'd go in with meet with them, bring groceries, and just visit with them. So I love friendship-based ministries. That's what I love. I love just bringing who you are, and talking to people. And so that's basically what those 2 ministries are. You know, Meals on Wheels. It's much more than just handing a meal to someone. It's, do you need any help with anything? And just visiting. Sometimes that's the only person's. You might be the only person they see that day, so I just try to pause and just sense what's going on for them. So
that's amazing. That group that you worked with, Bridging the Gap, they were focused on refugee families.
Yes.
In the Vickery
Meadows area.
in
Yes.
Dallas.
Yes.
And so you said there was one family that your family focused on.
A family that had about 10 children. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. And what we did is that we had a list of groceries that we would purchase, and we'd go take them, and then we would visit them. So it was a great experience for my kids. We'd go up in this tiny apartment, and all the kids would be there, and we'd hang out with them for a while and just check in. But we weren't there to teach them anything. We were just there to be a friend. You know, what's going on. I'd share what was going on my life, and they would share what was going on in their life. So I think my kids saw me leaning in, and that's what I felt like was important for them, to lean in rather than lean away.
How did it impact you as you were beginning to get to know this family and you're raising your own kids? How did it impact your life and your mothering?
Well, it showed me, you know, all these circumstances showed me that circumstances are not something you can base your life around. It helped me by just seeing some of these people were so very joyful, and it had nothing to do with, you know, how they live, but it was about maybe being together. You know, I saw the thread that they had community, and that was kind of a wonderful thing to see these families and, you know, the ones that I worked with. So I think that it taught me just to I didn't go in with an agenda. I wanted to go in, I wanted to hear from them as much as I wanted to be available to talk to them. I wanted to hear from them too.
It's such a unique perspective, and I know it was natural for you, but it really is the heart of the human impact too, which is to do what you just said you did, which is to really go in as equals.
Yes.
And to say, I'm not just going to help you, but you're also going to help me.
Yes.
Because we're both people.
Yes.
And I just love that spirit of going in with the expectation that although someone maybe doesn't have as many financial resources as you may have, they are equally human and have something incredible to offer you.
It's the power of vulnerability. You know, you hear about that, but there is really something about it. And, you know, if you go first, if you make yourself vulnerable, it's amazing what can follow. I've really seen that.
Do you remember how you might lead those conversations? Like, what kind of vulnerability would you share? Just if someone's thinking about, let's say they really want to work with refugees and they're trying to figure out how to get started, but they feel intimidated by the idea of going in someone's home. They don't know what conversations to have with them. I know you don't remember exactly, but can you give us some ideas of what it looks like to go first in vulnerability?
I think you have to know where you are. You have to be tuned into where you are and what's going on in your life, you know, at the time. So if it was, you know, something, you know, if you were having a hard time with your kid or in school, your kids in school, or if you were having a problem in a relationship, you might hint at that or talk about that. But I was pretty honest about where I was each week and how my week has been. I wasn't trying to, you know, go in there and say something that wasn't true. I was just telling them what was going on. So I think that you have to start by knowing where you know, being honest, being authentic. And so I think I don't have anything specific because it was so long ago. My kids were in the, you know, second and third grade, you know, so.
But it sounds like the principle of being able to check in with yourself and be honest with yourself, and then being willing to be who you really are to someone else. Do you think that created a sense of safety for them where they then were able to trust you more and open up with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's, you know, they saw that I was really who I was. You're not trying to be someone. You're not going in with an agenda. So I think that's well said.
Setting down your agenda, leading with vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Being truthful.
Truthful.
And authentic. You know, that's my big, be authentic. Be where you are. Be honest, you know.
I think sometimes we're afraid to be honest with ourselves about where we really are. Mm-hmm. And then it's hard to translate that to other people. And we live in a society where you can present an image and not really be authentic to who you are. And I love that that's one of your main takeaways, is to encourage people in authenticity.
And to lean into your fears. And because I will say that one of the best things that happened to me through Meals on Wheels is I got a chance to meet a gentleman named Paul Alexander who passed away about 2 years ago, but he was the man that lived in the iron lung, the longest living survivor in an iron lung. And when I would pass by his door delivering Meals on Wheels to his neighbor, I kept hearing a whirl of a machine. And one day I looked in there and I saw the iron lung, and I was so curious, but I was scared. And then one day I just got the courage to go in, and I just stood at the door and I said, hi, I pass by every day almost, or a couple times a week, and I see you in here. I'd love to come in and meet you. And he was so warm and welcoming. I was honest. I said, I'm so curious. And then I told him, I said, this is amazing that you have lived 72 years in an iron lung. He had gotten polio at 6 years old. And so after that, I became friends with him, and I came back, you know, just for years, just visiting with him, and he taught me a lot about, you know, about circumstances not being what you build your life on, and he taught me about not defining yourself through your limitations. And, you know, that would be my fear, Elisabeth. My fear would be not being able to get out and move around. And here he was. I was confronted with it for 72 years living in an iron lung. So that had a profound impact in my life.
That makes sense why
Yeah.
it was especially your fear. And you
Yes.
chose, because if you know June, you know that June walks everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
June is
I never
constantly
thought about
moving.
that. Yes.
And so the
Oh my gosh.
thought of being incapacitated is it's really the opposite of who you are. Tell people where you walk.
Well, I love to be outside and I love walking. I can't believe you just said that. I've never put that together. I can't believe that. But yes, I prefer to walk everywhere. So just so you know, Abby and I just walked to Rise the other night. Cut that out. But
So June lives on the east side of the city.
Yes, but
and
I'll walk.
Rise is on the west side of the
Yes.
city. So we're talking miles and miles and miles.
yeah, I love meeting friends for walks. That's my favorite thing to do.
That's incredible.
Yeah, you and I have walked.
We've walked. We
Yes.
love to walk too.
Yes. Yep.
I learn a lot about you and you learn a lot about me
Yes.
on our walks.
Yes.
I think it is really unique though how kind of deep that fear was in you and that you had the courage to push through. And I believe that when we confront our fears, there's a lot of wealth on the other side.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's what happened with you when his name is Paul,
Paul Alexander.
that
yes.
you were able to learn from Paul.
So much. So much.
And he was able to confront and teach you something about really your worst fear.
I mean, he would call me in the mornings and say, "Is there anything I can do for you today?" And I was blown away by that. And here is a man in an iron lung calling me in the morning saying, "What can I? Do you need anything from me?" Now, this is a man who went to law school in an iron lung, so he really understood the power of rising above your circumstances, not defining yourself through your limitations. And so it was a powerful impact on my life. And I'm so grateful for it because it happened, within the last, 10 years of my life. So
I'm so glad that not just you got to benefit from his wisdom, but that today we're getting to hear what he had to offer. It's very unusual to know someone in a circumstance like that, and such an extreme circumstance. He has so much to offer.
Yes.
People like you and me. And so will you talk again about your experience with Meals on Wheels, when you started? And you've said some of it, but just again, what has been so special to you about it? And you see it not just as dropping off a meal, as you said. Will you just tell me a little more about that experience?
Well, there's certain routes that I love to go because there's certain people that I love to see. And I just try to check in and see what's going on in their lives. Some people, I've got a couple people that are blind on the route that I've gotten to know. Some people are tethered to, whatever might be going on with them. But I just try to be available and see what they might need, see how their week has been, see what's new for them, or I ask them if there's anything you need, is there anything I can do, and I just share a little bit about my life with them. But I've kind of become friends with them. They're just precious. Some of them are just so dear. So.
And how has that impacted your life outside of your work with Meals on Wheels? You've talked about the friendships that you've formed have led to other times where you've gotten together with people.
Yes, I've had them to my Meals on Wheels. People, I go out to dinner with them. I have them at my home. There's a man I've become friends with. I pick him up and bring him over and we watch football together. When I go to the Mav games, I stand there trying to get T-shirts in the stands because I have some Meals on Wheels people that love the Mavs T-shirts. So I've become friends with them. They know when I go to Florida, or they know when I'm out of town. They remember. I'm just so surprised when I come back. If it's been a week or so or 2 weeks, they'll want to know where I've been. So it's a real authentic friendship.
And when you're in Dallas, when you're not traveling, how often are you going to deliver the meals?
Well, it works great for me because I am on the sub list. So you can work as many times as you want or not. So every day they need subs in East Dallas or different parts around the city. So you can go in and you can self-assign. And so if I'm in town, I try to do that. Uh, and but before I was doing it like 2 or 3 times a month. Like this week, I probably did it 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
And June, so you worked for 20 years, you had your children.
Yes.
And so are you working formally right now?
No, I haven't worked formally in the last over 20 years. Because when my son was born, he had some health issues that kind of catapulted me out of that world, and I stayed at home with him because he aspirated meconium. I've talked to you about that, I think. So he was on ECMO, and so it was a very rocky start for him, and so
It required your all.
oh yeah.
I think what's so neat to me is, watching you a few decades older than me, but how you've chosen to raise your children and also to care for people outside of your family system. Why was that important to you?
My mother, I grew up with a mantra. She used to say to me, "It's nice to be important, but more important to be nice." And I always heard, be a means to an end that doesn't end with you. Help people that, just be available. Lean in, help people that can't help you back. And it's a privilege to give. Don't make giving transactional. And I've just heard that my whole life, and I really believe it. I believe it, at my core. To give without expectation and let God do what He wants. Just go with an open heart and see what happens.
And it sounds like individuals have changed you. The work that you've committed yourself to go 4 times this week and be on the sub list, and when you were spending time with the refugee family, how would you describe the way that it's transformed you? If you could put it into a couple of sentences, what are the most important takeaways that you have experienced and are experiencing?
Well, I think that the things that I've learned, it has slowed me down. I've had to learn to just stop and be willing to kind of go at the pace of someone else, just to slow. And that's been an important lesson for me. And it's also been just meeting so many joyful people that have it tough, that are so excited for the smallest thing, and I just see their joy, and it's infectious with me. They just see how people appreciate any tiny little thing. And I stopped and got some Jolly Ranchers, and you'd think I had brought in a year's supply of filet mignon, just a little package of Jolly Ranchers, and he's thanking me every time I come to the door now. And so I think a small thing is okay. Just to do the small thing, lean into the small thing.
We talk a lot about at Moms Change the World that we are called to do small things with great love.
Okay.
That's a quote by Saint Therese.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what you're saying is it's not about the big things. It's about paying attention.
Right.
Noticing what's important to someone, doing something like picking up Jolly Ranchers. But then the benefit is that their joy is so overwhelming, it changes the way we feel too.
Right.
I notice that in my work on the streets. I go expecting to find sadness or despair. And sometimes people are sad, people are having a hard day, but so often people are so grateful. And I'm so surprised, and it changes how I think about gratefulness in my own life, because I have so much materially and they have so little, but their gratefulness is so much greater often than my own.
Yes.
And they're teaching me what it looks like to be grateful.
Yes. I've experienced that over and over again. Yeah. People are, when I'm handing someone a meal, and it might just contain a bag that has a piece of bread, a little carton of milk, an apple, people are so appreciative and so grateful. Um, just it doesn't make you count your blessings.
Mm-hmm. Touches your heart.
Yeah.
One other thing that I think is special about you is the way you open your home to other people. And I've not known June to not have people who need a place to live living in her home. And just, I think what's true about you is whenever you began to expand your heart to others, it's like your heart just keeps growing and expanding more and more. And I think that's an important takeaway for others is that just crack the door open. Just take that.
That's been a gigantic blessing for me. We've had people live with us. Right now I have a seminary student that's with me, and it's so wonderful. I've got a friend who's got some health challenges living with me right now, and then the seminary student, and before that we had a couple, and they ended up having 2 children that were born while they were living with us, and it was they went through a kidney transplant, and the wife was the donor. It was the husband's second transplant, and she ended up being a donor, and they ended up just staying with us, and they had 2 kids, and it's been wonderful. You really learn that family is just not your blood family, but it can be if you open up your arms. There's family all around, and it's been a wonderful, really wonderful blessing. Been very pivotal in my life.
Thank you so much, June. I want to encourage the people that watch this to find a June, someone who loves like you, and to be a June for someone else, to be someone who opens the doors of their heart and to watch that love grow. I think when people take a baby step, it ends up steamrolling to where your whole life becomes so much more expansive. And I see that in you, and I just honor and respect you so much for the way you've chosen to live your life. I learned from you.
Thank you.